door 20 is this door right by Mrs. Deniz's room. So we will have that propped open in some fashion so you can get in here. Mr. Smith and I will be the math counts coaches. So a reminder, that starts Friday. Elias, you're good. Go ahead, man. All right, so we are not switching the B side of the block today. Mr. Estes and I are playing with doing this maybe once a week or every other week or something. It gives me the same, it gives either of us the same amount of time with you, but, connected as opposed to broken up. There's more right above Mrs. Fisher in the cabinet. That left cabinet. There's a bag of them. All right, so we should be going to Desmos now. You should be able to see percent machines because I didn't want you to be able to get into it yet. And the handout that you have goes with that. So you still need a handout. Hey. Reason why we have two handouts?
What? Because there's two different classes.
Is there a reason we have two of those?
Yeah.
Jackson, handout yet? Did you pencil sharpener? Does it seem like it's not?
Yeah, sometimes it goes like that, and then you have to set it back to it.
Yeah.
Everybody forgot pencil today, apparently. So.
Apparently. So we've got these things called percent machines that we could use one at a time, but by the time we get to what's on your paper, we're using multiple percent machines at once. Elias, do you have a Chromebook or do you need mine? Okay, sweet.
Wait, do we put the numbers in the...
So we'll fill in your paper together. You just work on the decimals, okay? We'll fill in your paper together. Okay, to answer your question though, Josh, if you're wanting to put the number that comes out of this machine, you could put it there, but then we're going to put it into this machine, and then it's going to come out. We're doing two machines in a row, but the first thing on your paper is actually slide 3. So be careful. There's a couple things to do in the Desmos before you get to that one.
Somebody put less in it, but I don't know.
So no Owen today? Owen, sorry that you're having to play along from home. And Jenny will actually probably be watching this video because I know you're sick.
Oh, hey, my Chromebook died. So Jackson, this is something you need to think about if you turn on your Chromebook. Okay. Please don't get defensive. If you turn on your Chromebook and you can see that it's low, you know that we have chargers here. So you need to take responsibility for asking for a charger or showing up to school and plugging it in. You know that your charger broke, so also go visit Miss Pace and ask her what to do about your broken turn. You know Miss Pace down in the library? So, like, I will help you while you're in class, but this is not my problem to solve. You got to take responsibility for it. Anybody else have a low battery on your Chromebook? Are you plugged in now like I suggested? Or did Elijah steal it? Oh no. Good thing we've got plenty of chargers. Because I have somehow ended up with extras.
Typing on the pager.
Because then when it's battery saver mode, it switched how much energy it was using, which is not going to help it perform any better. Is that helping, Lakin? So why are you doing it?
Okay, this would help me probably in that. Oh, you're a little bit past.
I'd be on this computer and really smooth.
Increase by 50, decrease by 50. The machine's output will be less than your
It's also
total
very
is
high.
positive. So let's say if we put like 20 in there. Yeah, so we put 20 as our input and it goes in, increases by 50. Okay, so what's an increase of 50% when 50 is our input?
I wish I did. If they're not in the box, I don't know where they are right now. So check the bins.
You need a
There's one on the back counter. Jimmy, I see one on the back counter.
There's one over here too. Anybody else needs one?
So it looks like most of us are getting up to this slide or are past it. So I'm going to yank us back to it right now. Sorry if you are past that slide and mad at me about that. So we've got two machines in a row. We've got our increase by 50% and our decrease by 50%. And I think yesterday we talked really briefly about what would happen if you were like a shop owner.
Mr. Hudson,
Yeah.
do you know what happened to Izzy?
No, she got called to the office.
Oh, shit. Okay, it's not all.
Yeah.
All the kids were like, Mr. Hudson took her. And I was like, okay.
To the
Gotcha.
office.
Thank you.
Yeah, no idea. All right, well, whose card just jumped out of the deck? So, Caroline, if I take 20 and I increase it by 50, what do I, 50%, sorry, because if I just increase by 50, I'd get 70, right? But 50%, what is 50% of 20, or what do we get?
Oh, wait, no.
Caroline, sorry, you probably missed it. But yeah, so Josh is right. So 50% is actually going to add 10 here. So what's that turn into, Caroline? Now, I'll take a volunteer for this. If I want to talk about what to multiply by, if I want to do this in one shot, what could I multiply 20 by to show that we're increasing by 50%? Lakin? 1.5 or 1.5, because we need that original 1. Right? 1 just gives us what we started with. So to increase that 50%, we pick up an extra, and I'm going to even put the 0 here, 1.50, so it looks like 150%. You could write that down, and it might help you, especially because you're stuck on this screen that I'm looking at. All right, so we're at 30 now. Now we're going to decrease by 50%. Guys, here's where I think some of us are getting confused. This is now our new 100%, right? Once we get a new number, that's our new total. So if I want to decrease by 50%, Josh, what could I multiply by to decrease by 50%?
Decrease by 50%.
What do we, or we could also say, what do we have left after we decrease by 50%?
What do we have left? 50.
50.
50.
Or okay, so you're saying the number. Sorry, I thought you were saying 50 because you're right. If you decrease by 50%, what percent do you have left? 50%. So if we multiply by 0.5, sorry, I honestly just kind of wanted to write that here. We can multiply by 0.5, or we can think about take away half of what we have, right? If 50% is half, if we take away half of what we have. So guys, we quote unquote did the same thing. Did we actually do the same thing? We went up by 50% and down by 50%. Did we do the same thing?
Yeah.
Not really, right? Like, kind of. We said the same percent. Did we change by the same number? No, we ended up lower than where we started. Jackson? I know. This is called review. All right, go ahead and move on to the next slide then. I believe that's the next one on our paper. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes after you have time to look at this and the slide after, and maybe even the slide after that. Hey, Lakin, can you do this today or no? This is not an efficient use of our time. I don't know why you decided to click the power button and just hope that it wouldn't do anything. Guys, if you have your answer for that slide that you're looking at, go ahead and move on. You can look at other people's work. Be careful with how this is asking this question. When they ask about percent increase, they're not asking like what we can multiply by. So we need to figure out what percent, but then we can differently figure out what we can multiply by. So like the answer you guys put in is what we can multiply by. But what does that mean? Like how many percent extra is that? If it, because you guys put in 1.2, right? What percent really is 1.2 if I move that decimal back? It's 100, because we got two places. You think about 1.2 as a percent. Huh? We gotta go two places. Move that decimal two spots. It's 120, right? Just 120, because if it was 1.2, you guys wrote down 1.2, because that's what we could multiply by to get 40. To turn that back into a percent, we go two places. If there's no zero here, we just put a zero there. So that's actually 100%. So how much extra percent is that? How much extra beyond 100? There you go. That's what we increased by. See that one? Okay, show me you can do it on your own. I really just wanted to get your attention. On the handout. Look at the handout. I don't make these just because it's fun. Honestly, we had to fight with the copy machine today. We're looking right here on the handout. So, when we talk about the percent machine that took 40 and made it into 48. Liam, can you tell me what you guys, or what you talked about back there since Owen's not here? I guess you were on your own. Talked with yourself. Great conversation, right? Did you get in an argument?
What?
Did you get in I like to argue with myself.
Yes, I got in an argument.
Did you win?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, what'd you think with going to 40 to 48?
20%.
How'd you get there? Because, like, in my mind, when I look at this, what I'm thinking is we did plus 8. But that's not a percent. How did you figure out 20%?
I divided 48 and 40, which gave me 1.2.
Ooh, so Liam said he divided 48 by 40. You could choose to write down any of this if you would like. Sorry, that's a 0. And you said that got you 1.2. Okay. How'd you get to 20% from that?
I used the decimal.
What do you mean?
It shows 2 instead of 20.
If we bump our decimal over, like we said, what, Monday? Now feels kind of far away, but the other notes that we have about this, to go from decimal into percent, we got to bump our decimal back to the right. If there's no 0, we have to add it. So this is actually 120%, Liam is saying. So that means how much percent extra? 20% extra. Now there's another strategy that I want us to start trying, and it was actually thought up by a previous Phoenix student. Their name was actually Rachel, but not this Rachel, like Mrs. Fisher, Rachel as in like 5 years ago, so she's probably in college now. Yes. Okay, you wanna tell me what you did? Go ahead. Okay. I like what you're doing. I have a different way to look at that. I like what you're doing, but I love what you did. That is absolutely correct. So I'm getting a little distracted because I'm going to go ahead and do this because I want you guys all writing down what we're actually doing up here. So this method, thought up by Rachel, I'll save her last name since we're recording, but she dubbed the 10% method. 40 is right now our 100%. So go ahead and throw that on your paper somewhere. I left a bunch of open space, or we have graph paper, right? Because we said we were getting graph paper. Josh, you getting this written down? Got a pencil malfunction back there. Rachel decided that if she could get to 10% in any situation, that from there it made stuff way easier. So if I have 100%, how do I go from 100% back to 10%? What can I do to get to 10%? Divide by what? 10. Divide by 10. Which we just did our whole unit on proportions. If we do it on bottom, we got to do it on top. So Rachel would here determine that 10% is how much? 4, right? So if 10% is 4, where would our 8 that we're talking about go? Would 8 go on top or bottom? Is 8 a percent or like an amount? It's an amount, right? So 8 would go on here. How do we get from 4 to 8? Multiply by 2. What? There are lots of ways to solve these problems. So there's Rachel's 10% technique. I haven't thought about that, the fact that she must be in college by now.
I think I might have unconsciously done that because I realized that 8 was able to go to 40. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, so like, so I was like, I think I might have unconsciously done that and I
Yeah.
had to figure out the answer.
And like when you go out to eat, how much are you supposed to tip when you go out to eat?
Maybe like 10%.
More than that. 18 would be like probably 15 to 18 would be a minimum. If you're being nice, you should be tipping 20%.
Depending on how much you got.
Yeah. But like 20% is easier to calculate. Because if I find 10%, how can I find 20%?
You just double it.
Yeah. Because from 10%, we can get to 20% by doubling. We're gonna... So I don't want to like lock your computer. It should be unlocked if you not hit refresh. Actually, I am gonna lock your computer again because we're gonna do a couple problems together. Flip your screen. Flip your screen. Flip your paper.
Yeah, I was like,
I don't know.
I know how to do it. Like
We're
this.
talking about Haruka. We're talking about Haruka. Go ahead and read this. Grab a highlighter if you feel like it.
Highlight.
If you want. I highlighted a couple things. Some of you may have seen this question. It is the most missed question so far because some of us finally tried this homework. Guys, you don't have to have the 80% or higher score the day the homework is assigned. You need to do it and try it so I can check on what we're struggling with so I can pull these problems to help you. Only like 4 of you have submitted this homework so far. I need more, like it's not in math. I know we've been finishing first quarter work, but like we got to keep up with second quarter also. You could be kept here on Discovery Day for second quarter work. So go ahead and draw a little what we call like a tape diagram. I'll start over with you guys just so you can see how I drew mine. We're going to draw a 100% diagram.
so is it like in the little space that Ruka?
Yeah, and the little space below it. Left that for us to work. And of course, all the way over here would be how many percent? 0.
0%.
And based on the story they tell us, the 6 kilometers, is that like all of what we're looking for? Or is it less than all of what we're looking for? It's less, right? How much less?
1 kilometer less. Oh, 25%.
So I don't see a 1 kilometer up here anywhere. I see 25% less. So from our 100%, we're gonna, and we can approximate it, right? Just try to make it look like a fourth. I maybe made mine a little big. If you want, you could cut your line in half and then cut it in half again. That kind of helps me find my 25% that I take away. If we take away 25%, what percent do we have left?
75.
75, right? So let's go ahead and fill that in. That we still have 75%. And how many kilometers was that 75%? That's the 6. That's the 6 kilometers. So I want you to turn to your neighbor and talk about how could you try to figure out this 25% that we're looking for. How could you try to figure out that 25% that we're looking for? Jimmy, I need you to pull it off. It's a distraction at this point. All the way off. Completely. All the way off, Jimmy. At this point, you've made it a distraction. If the 6 is our 75%, could we set up like a proportion? We also filled in the 6. So a nice thing to do with this is either use highlighters or brackets. So if we want to show that we're looking at a certain part of this, we can draw like little brackets. At least with this, since we lost 25%, what percent do we have left? 75, so let's go ahead and put that back. So it'd be The reason that we do things in the order that we do, in math at least, is because they should, like, the skills we just learned should help us with the skills that we're trying to learn. So 6 kilometers is our 75%. You could write this down. It is probably helpful.
Wow.
Now, we could go to the 10% method here. We don't always have to go to 10%, though. Liam, you've had your hand up for a minute. Like, Jackson's was up and down, but you've had your hand up for, like, what's up?
I believe that 25% of it would be 2.
You believe, let's see if we can prove it, right? Prove it. I don't know if that's the accurate use of the word bet, but
Bet.
prove it. How could we get to 25%?
So, if 6 kilometers is 75%,
Yes.
that means it's most likely going to be 2 because that would be because 75% can be broken up into 3 25%.
Broken up into 3. So you mean divided? Liam said broken up into 3. That means divided. We can divide by 3. Or we can look right here at the drawing we made. We can break up 75% into 2, 2, 2. So then Liam is saying, okay, then that must be 2. Let's check it with the math. If we divide by 3, that must be 2. But if we're trying to answer how long did we hike in all, guys, I also wanted to talk about these questions because there are trap doors. Is our answer 2?
No.
No. Is our answer 8? Because that's what we just got here, right? We said if this is also 2, if this section right here is also 2, 6 plus 2, how long was this hike? 8, right? We got two more, right?
I thought you meant that.
But wait! In all, we need the 6 miles and the 8 miles. So how far did she hike in all?
14 miles.
14 miles.
Wowzer.
Kilometers. Thank you. Jackson, you tricked me into saying miles. We were working in
Well, you said
kilometers
miles
here.
and I said miles.
Yeah, well.
What the fuck?
Because America. Questions?
No. Oh, you're supposed to highlight that? I didn't know.
I mean, you can highlight what you want. These problems might end up on your homework. A lot of us have probably seen this problem. Let's try another one. I am going to give us a break today. Not while the other classes are switching classes, so don't worry. We will take a break before we keep going. But we're going to do one more of these at least before we do that, because we're going to let the other classes take their break first. Try this. This one's slightly easier. Chat with your neighbor, highlight what you want. Try this one. Would like you work on it or us check it? We'll get to it in the second half of class. That's my plan. Is this helping us solve this problem?
No, but I already figured it out.
You have it written down?
No,
Did you discuss it with Josh?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Hooray!
You are strong. Okay, is letting your head down and giving up going to help you learn how to do this? The answer is laying down and giving up is going to help you learn how to do this. So what could you potentially draw a diagram of the last one? Could you potentially set up a proportion of the last one? Could you potentially
That's tiny.
So that's how we go from here to here.
Tiny. It can't be 925. He's saying how many more?
Did you read the part in bold? The actual question it's asking?
That's not the same thing we do on the bottom, we do on the top too. Again,
Clayton, you want to help me out? Did you do like a number line sort of thing, or like a proportion, or what'd you do? What'd you start drawing?
I mean, I just kind of like started from like 450 plus 10%.
Okay, well, what is 10%?
Well, what we could do is divide 450 by 10.
So if we set up that the 450 minutes, and if you don't know what you're doing, you should definitely set this up. Now you could also set up like a number line with your 100% and your 450 minutes. But since we just did this stuff last unit, I feel like doing more of this stuff kind of makes sense. So if we want that 10% that Oliver wants to read more, what are we looking for? Calculator?
I
I'll
got
give
one
you
here, Elias.
Oh, she's going, dude.
I had one right.
So Clayton said divide by 10. I agree. I'm going to do that to get to the 10%.
Rachel's strategy. Is it Rachel or is it?
Yeah, it was Rachel. I don't want to say her last name because we're recording, but I can tell you guys later in case you run into her out in the world somewhere. I mean, at this point, she would be an adult, but I don't really want to make her famous, you know, because all my followers, they would go, you know, seek her out. I'm joking.
Rachel
I don't have
McNachel.
followers. All right, so if we divide by 10, what is the 10% here? 45 minutes.
Hooray!
You just take away the zero.
Okay, so this next month then, you're saying you just did 450 plus that 10%, which we just figured out is 45. Okay, so what's that? 495. But wait, there's a pit full of snakes.
Hooray!
Spikes, dangerous things, bones. You can tell people fallen in before. What's the trap door here?
Yay!
How many minutes will he read in during
The 2 months.
we know we
If you get excited and you're like 495 and you type it in, it's wrong. Because you didn't actually read the question of we need to combine both months. Questions here?
I would.
Yoo-hoo, what, huh? Questions?
No.
Let's try this.
Oh, wait. Let me do one more. Let's try the next one.
I didn't say only one.
Are we doing all these? Are we doing all these in a rush?
Not necessarily, but you might have these when you go to do con in a minute or two.
So, Anne increased the quantity of all ingredients by 70%. She used 80 grams of cheese.
Alright, we should maybe actually do this one together. Now that I think about this one's a little different than the ones we just did. If you're highlighting, you can highlight a couple things. Major, is Anne using more or less than what she's supposed to? More, because she increased by 60%. So guys, if I set up like my number line thing, if here's 100%, Anne is saying, yeah, forget about your 100%. I'm going to add how much extra? 60 extra percent. So what percent is she at now?
160.
She's at 160% of what the recipe wanted her to use. So we got this drawn on our paper. I'm waiting to see some pencils move. So her 160%. Okay, apparently that's not going to go away. How much was her 160%? How much was it? What did she use? How much? She used 80, so be careful. This is where I said, like, decided we should probably do this together. She used 80 grams. That means the 80 grams is her 160%. That's not the 100%, right? That's the 160%. That's the way extra that she used. Now, I don't know about you, but at this point, I kind of look at this and see what we've been doing for like a couple weeks now. If I put 80 grams over 160%, if I want to pay tribute to the Rachel method, could I get back to 10%? How can I take 160 and get back to 10%? Turn to your neighbor, talk about it for a second. Try it with the calculator. What can I do to 160 to get back to 10%? What can I do to 160 to get back to 10%? Ooh, Reese, say it louder. Guys, we want to get back to 10. What times 10 makes this number we're starting at? 16 times 10 makes that number. So if we get rid of that 16, if we divide by that, we end up back at 10. So what is 80 divided by 16? Clayton? Oh, 5. You were trying to show me 5. I get it now. Now, I bet at least one of you can figure out where I'm going with this. If I have 10%, but I'm looking for 100%, right? It says how much cheese did the recipe want? So we really need 100%. Turn to your neighbor and discuss, how do we get here? What do we do now? How can we figure out what the recipe wanted? So yeah, we kind of ran out of paper here, but if we show the divide by 16, so let's better show that divide by 16. Show it on top. Because I got Post-its at the back too. If you want to grab a Post-it to make your paper bigger. I forget. Hey, Mrs. Fisher, do you remember how many grams in a pound? See, America. Why have we made things so complicated? Jackson, can you tell me how we can go from 10% to 100%? Jackson says times by 10. If we do it on bottom,
You have to do it on top.
we got to do it on top. What's 5 times 10?
Or you can do a half.
So 50 grams.
Or you can do a half.
Questions? It is 11:03. You can have up to 11:08 for a break, but when you get back here, we're just going to work on your con practice for a little while. So if you decide to abuse this and take an extra long break, you are deciding to give yourself less practice time to get work done. Take a break, go to the restroom, get a drink, do whatever you need to do, or if you don't need a break, you can just work on your con. So we do not need to go to work.
No, I'm not a computer. I'll break them during next time.
I was gonna say you can take them if you need it. I thought I was doing it right. My phone is about to go off. Actually, I set an alarm to try to remind myself.
Ha! 1% higher than yours.
Yeah. For sure. All right. I need you to carefully read this and tell me who scored more points. take a moment, carefully read this. Who scored more?
Is this on our handout?
Yeah, it's on your handout. Yeah. There's 2 more left on your handout, guys. We're gonna knock out those 2, then I'm just gonna give you free time for at least like 20 minutes. All right, so Val scored fewer, right? I heard multiple of you saying PETA's got more points. So Val scored 30% fewer. PETA scored more. That's a pen, not a highlighter. So let's set up. I know, that's what we got to figure out. That's why we're going over it together. That's why I put it on your worksheet. Right here. Yeah.
So, Val scored 30% fewer points than PETA. So, what we would do is take PETA's score and divide it by 10.
Now hold on. Why?
Because we would need to find out what 30% of 1,060 is. And then subtract that.
So, if you're not looking up here, you probably should. If we know Val scored 30% fewer, Elias, I know I put you in a weird spot. But go ahead and look up here. We know what PETA scored. We're going to treat PETA like our 100%. So, 100%, not points, right? Percent. So if we need 30% fewer, Clayton said, do what? Divide by 10 so we can get back to 10%. When we divide by 10, it just knocks off any last zero. If there's a final zero, it just knocks it off. So how many points is 10%? 106. What do you want to do now? Sure. If we times by 3, there's another way we can go, but we can totally go this way. If we times by 3, times by 3, times by 3, 300, 318. And then what would we need to do with that 318?
Hi, sorry, do you have any more of those letters before I go sort them?
Yes, just one from Eva yesterday.
Okay, cool. I just didn't want to grab it.
Now the other option, thank you, if we lose 30%, we lost out on 30%, we scored 30% less, what percent did we still have? Compared to PETA. PETA had 100%. We have 30% less. What percent do we have? What's 100 minus 30? Anybody? 70%, right? We could have also gone to 70% down here, and that would have jumped us right to the final answer. Or you can do the subtraction and figure out your points that way. I'm not going to tell you the final answer because I'm going to leave a little bit of math for you guys to do. But you could either take away, you could subtract the 30%, or if we go back to 10%, we could just do times 7 and times 7. One more problem on your paper, then I'll give you time to work. Check this one out. We did it yesterday, but we're going to do it differently today.
We did yesterday.
We talked about it, but it was end of class. It was really fast. I also wasn't feeling really good yesterday, so we're going to do this a little differently today.
Yeah, I know.
Cody was 165 tall on the first day of school this year, which is 10% taller than he was on the first day last year. So wait, 10% taller than last year. If we call last year's height like H, Cody's got 10% more this year. So what percent would he be at if he got 10% extra? 110%. How tall is he?
155 centimeters.
Could I put this into a proportion? Leave yourself space. right? That's why I'm bumping back to the left a little bit. 165 centimeters is our 110% because he's got the 10% extra this year. Any questions on why I'm able to set up that fraction, that ratio? How could we get back to 10%? Ooh, divide by what? 11. Guys, if you have, like, notice this 110, we're dividing by 11 because 11 times 10 would give us 110. So what's 165 divided by 11? Does it come out nice? What's 165 divided by 11? You've got a calculator right there. Don't just shrug at me. I need your help.
We're 50.
So then how could I get to 100%?
Times it by 10.
How can I get from 10 to 100? Times by 10. Times by 10. So how tall was he last year? 150 centimeters.
Wowzers.
All right, I'm going to leave that one up there. You guys got time to work. I'll leave that up there. You got time to work. All right, I want to pause us real quick to talk about one other question. Before, like, this is not with the other new stuff, but one more on the percent problems one that I felt like is worth talking about. The Tapiwa and Adam question. So running through this real quick also because then it's in the video, right? If you need to go back and see these later, it's in the video from class. If you have not seen this question yet, it tells us that Tapiwa raked more. Tapiwa beat Adam by 5%. Hey, Jimmy. It doesn't matter what you like. When a teacher asks you to do something, you do that. Is there any clarification you need beyond that? Thank you. Put a pencil in your hand. Act like you give a crap because I'm helping you guys get your homework done. Tapiwa outperformed Adam by 5%. If we call Adam our 100%, then what percent is Tapiwa at? What percent, if they got 5% extra, 105%, right? And how many leaves did they actually rake? Well, I'm glad we're not counting leaves. They did it in liters. 357 liters. Because you, like, trash bags are a certain number of liters. Instead of Rachel's 10% method, I want to throw one more at you guys. Could I get back to 1%? How could I turn 105 into 1%? Clayton?
Divided by 100.
Not just divide by 100.
105.
Divide by 105. Guys, this might be easier than Rachel's method. Maybe. Depends on your brain and what you decide. If we can go back to 1%, we can then build back up to 100%, right?
Wow.
So if we divide by 105 on top and bottom, I might need some help from someone with a calculator. 3.4, you said? So then how do I go from 1% to 100%? Times by 100. It'd be 340. So you can use Rachel's 10% method, or you could use a 1% method. Either way, you can get your way back to the total 100% that we're looking for. Whatever you do on top, you do on bottom. let's give you like 5 more minutes to work on what you're working on. Then we'll go over some discount and like tax problems, things like this. Take like 5 more minutes on your own.
Sure.